This is the Motherlands podcast. The intention of this podcast is to provide evidence-based information through honest conversations on fertility, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and beyond by bridging together the two worlds of allopathic medicine and holistic practices to improve the reproductive health outcomes of women. I am your host, Keely Semler. Hello, welcome back to the Motherlands podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I am recording this intro from a motel off the 101 in the central coast of California. Our house lost power yesterday, and I decided to hop in the car with my dog since my partner is out of town for the next few weeks, and we are just making do with the hot weather and found ourselves a motel with a pool. I'm really excited to share this episode with you. It is with Elizabeth Carter of Honest Rituals. If you've never heard of Honest Rituals, it is a holistic spa that has two locations, one in Topanga, just outside of Los Angeles, and the other on the island of Kauai. And it is a holistic spa that offers very special services such as facial massage, which is how I met Elizabeth. I was looking to see a practitioner that could work on my jaw tension, and I found her and I went and saw her and we did a facial massage treatment, and it was so helpful for me to just have someone who has very calming hands and a lovely presence just work on my jaw tension. I know I'm not the only one out there that has jaw tension. Many of my clients have jaw tension throughout pregnancy, and it's really important to find a practitioner that can help you relax and ease that tension in your jaw, because we know that there's a very strong connection between the jaw and the pelvis. So it's a way to access your pelvis and soften your pelvis, all the muscles and ligaments and tissues in the pelvis, by going in through the jaw and doing some jaw tension release. When we were recording this conversation, she was sitting in her bed with her daughter laying next to her, quietly taking a nap, which is such a beautiful image in my mind. She shares her raw perspective and her experience of being pregnant and giving birth on the island of Kauai, and her experience working with a midwife and having an out-of-hospital birth. She never took a pregnancy test. She just knew she was pregnant, and she didn't know her exact due date. So those two things are really impressive to me, because as someone that has supported hundreds of women through pregnancy, it takes a lot of trust and building confidence around your intuition that, pregnancy and labor will unfold exactly the way that it needs to. So to me, that is just really impressive. And also just overall her sense of joy as she openly expresses of being a mother and what it feels like to be a mother. It's almost palpable and also really uplifting to hear. So thank you so much for being here. If you like this episode, it would be so helpful if you liked and left a review, only if it resonates with you. If you know someone that works with a brand or a company and shares a similar ethos of providing deeper and more comprehensive care to women and mothers, and who may be open to supporting the Motherlands podcast, I'd love to chat with you. You can email me, hello@keelysemler.com. Hope you enjoy this conversation with Elizabeth, and I'll see you guys again soon. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being willing to come on the podcast and chat all things birth and motherhood and postpartum. And I'm just so grateful for your time today. I'm wondering if we can just jump right in. I wanted to ask you, prior to becoming pregnant, what was your understanding of birth and of motherhood?
Oh, it's such a good question. And thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk about all of this. I've never shared publicly my birth story or much in that realm. So this will be a fun little deep dive into it. But prior to getting pregnant, I think I had a lot of undoing to do before I felt very ready to have a child. Not so much the programming I experienced through social programming, but more so like the seeing. I was a nanny for 4 kids in New Zealand. I was an au pair after high school. And that was a big,
Did you say New Zealand?
yeah.
Oh my God, I lived in New Zealand too. That's so
You
wild.
did?
In
Oh my God.
Wellington, yeah.
Oh, I love Wellington. I spent 3 months in Dunedin and then 3 months in Auckland. All my friends were going to college. I was like, I want to travel. So I became an au pair for
That's
6 months.
exactly what I did. I didn't go to college right away. I was a student teacher.
Amazing. And in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Wow. So parallel. What year were you there?
I graduated high school in 2008. So I was there in 2008 for
Okay,
about
you're there
6 months.
before me. Wow, so fun.
Back then, I feel like no one
You-
even knew where New Zealand was on a map.
Right? We had friends growing up that were from New Zealand, so I was always familiar with it. And then when it came to choosing a country, because you can be an au pair in almost every country. And I was like, New Zealand's where I want to go. Because I kept hearing about it growing up and it just seemed so foreign and far away. I was like, I'm going there. So I went and yeah, I was a nanny for 4 children. Family was South African. So it was pretty cool to have that culture as well there. So I got to experience 2 different cultures. Prior to that, I maybe had a few jobs here and there babysitting. So I wasn't very well versed in that realm, but I loved kids. And I was like, this be fun. And I get to travel. And it was great. It was a lot though. It was like very eye-opening to see like, wow, this is a lot. Like 4 kids is a lot. It gave me an understanding of like, okay, I want to make sure when I do have a baby that I'm ready in many different ways. So it was really great in that way. And then, yeah, just seeing different people, friends, family members have babies and like really witnessing it and not just the good, like witnessing all of it. And I was just like, wow, okay, I'm not ready.
Mm.
And I wanted to have financial stability before. I know having kids can be a whole different thing and to have another stress of like finances. So I always wanted to be like, okay, I feel good in my life to have a baby and to support. And I also wanted to have the freedom to be with them. Like my mom raised us all at home and she was there all the time with us. And I was so grateful for that. And I want to give that to my baby. So I just wanted some things to feel good and in alignment first. Bailey and I never really actively like we're like, okay, let's get pregnant now. It just kind of like we're like, okay, I feel like we can open up the doors now and let's just see. And even that, like there is a lot of, but wait, am I ready? Like, and Bailey, he's always been like, I've looked at him from like the first time we started dating. I'm like, you're going to be an amazing father. Like there was never any doubt surrounding him. It was like, am I ready? Am I like there yet? And we just began to open it up and I got pregnant and then I had a miscarriage about 6 weeks later and it was devastating. It was like the hardest thing emotional for me because I knew I wanted a baby. I still was like, am I ready? But then I got pregnant. I was like, okay, we're doing this. And then you get attached. The love I had already felt for this being in me and the excitement and the joy. And then to have a miscarriage, it felt like my heart had been like ripped out of me. It was also so confirming to me though that I was ready and I did want a baby. So it was beautiful in that aspect. And I think it was just like a little like window, like, okay, I'm here, I'm ready. Are you ready? There was still so much that I felt like I wanted to shift before having the baby. And so when I had that first pregnancy, I was like, wait, there's so much I need to do to like be in the place I want to be and to have this baby. And so it was a little window to be like, all right, get your stuff together. You want a baby. So let's shift some things. And so
Did you have support around you during your miscarriage?
Bailey, and no, besides that, I did tell my close friends that I was pregnant. I think it's hard to then express like I had a miscarriage. You don't really talk about it too much. Like growing up, I never really heard about miscarriages too much. I want to say there was like a lot of shame around it.
So
And
much
some,
shame. And I think a lot of people feel so alone in their loss. And it
yeah.
hurts to talk about It's so hard, and yet so many women have miscarriages now.
And I think maybe it's always been similar, maybe more so now, not sure, but maybe more so we're talking about it more. So it seems more common. And yeah, it felt very shameful for me. And I was like, why? It's almost like you're letting down people. Like, you tell them something and then you're like, oh, wait, no, this just happened. And I just like made me want to like go hibernate, like recluse. I was like, wow, I feel so vulnerable. And before I was even like done bleeding, I was like, Bailey, we're booking a trip to Kauai. Like, I need to go be out in nature. I need to heal. I'm always pretty joyful and happy. And I just felt so sad. And like, I feel like there's not quite words to describe it, but I knew I needed to go retreat and be in nature. So we booked a trip to Kauai and we hiked the Kalalau Trail, which is like this beautiful trail where the road stops in the North Shore of Kauai and you just go by foot and 12 miles to like this incredible beach. And I hadn't done it before. And I just knew I was like, that's where I need to heal. That's where I can like come back to myself. And yeah, so we did. And hiking too, like this, I've heard this hike is very hard. And I felt like I needed to be like pushed and tested in some sort of way physically too. I don't know. Yeah, we did it and it was amazing. And I feel like that trip, so many things transpired afterwards of that trip. So it was kind of like the point where a lot of decisions were made.
Thank you for sharing that and for being willing to be so vulnerable. I know that wasn't easy then, and it's probably not easy now talking about it. I'm wondering, once you got pregnant the second time with your daughter, how did you prepare for labor and birth, and what was your journey and finding support through that?
So my preparation was moving to Kauai. It's like, I need to be somewhere peaceful. I felt so deeply that my peace directly corresponds to their peace, especially being pregnant. I was like, I need to be in peaceful environment. And Topanga Canyon's so beautiful and a beautiful community, but it's close to LA and it's very busy. And I just didn't want to be in that atmosphere of being pregnant. And so that was something we did. I was 4 months pregnant and we moved to Kauai. And during that 4 months, I think after having a miscarriage, you're kind of holding your breath. You're like, is this one going to last? I'm not telling anyone. You're just like, which is sad, really, because like you should be happy and joyful and excited, but based off, your past experiences, out of protection for yourself, you do it differently. And so I felt like once I landed in Kauai, like I didn't tell anyone. I had told like the closest of close of my friends, and that's it. And then we landed in Kauai, and it had been 4 months, and I felt like I could finally like exhale, be like, okay, I'm here. Like this is where I want to have my baby. This is where I want her to experience the first months of her life. It's so peaceful. It's so beautiful there. I will be more peaceful and calm. And so that was my number one preparation, was moving to Kauai. And then as far as a team, I had an amazing midwife in Kauai. I found her once I got there. I saw one midwife prior to me leaving just to do the 20-week anatomy scan, because in Kauai, it's very not tricky, but it's like you have to send the results to Oahu and then they come back and it's just not as easy. So I had talked to the midwife I had in Kauai. She's like, well, the one thing I'd recommend is maybe doing it in California before you get here. It's a little easier. And so I saw a midwife just to do that. And then I didn't see Jasmine, is her name, until I was maybe like 5 months pregnant. And I didn't even take a pregnancy test with Penelope. I just knew. I was like, I just know I'm pregnant and see what happens.
How did you know you were pregnant? I'm so curious.
So she was actually conceived in Mallorca. We had been here on a trip where I am right now. And so I didn't know I was pregnant until my mom actually told me. We had been gone because we went to Mallorca in October, and then we had gone to Todos Santos in Mexico for Thanksgiving, and we met up with my parents there. And we were in a yoga class, and my boobs must have been like huge, because she was like, are you pregnant? And I was like, no.
The moms always know.
They know. And I was like, no. And I actually was like, no, because it's like normal when I was on my period, I get big boobs beforehand. So that wasn't out of the ordinary. But then there was like one night in Ted Santos where I was like, I think I am pregnant. I felt like I stopped and like tuned in with my body and was like, wait, I felt very like, I call it like a little spiral in my belly, like a moving cosmo, just like swirling with energy. And I felt it for the first time in Todos Santos. I must have been early, like around 4 to 5 weeks. And then we got back to Topanga. And then like all the symptoms hit. And I was like, oh, I'm pregnant. I just knew and I just didn't take a test. And I was like, all right, let's see. And like we just made really quick plans. Like things just started falling into place. Like the quickest manifestations I've ever had were just like boom, boom, boom. I was like, whoa. After that 4-month period, it was like I really became present with being pregnant. And I was like, okay, I can exhale and really begin to take this in.
That's so beautiful and also really special that you knew and that you didn't need the confirmation from taking a million pregnancy tests. I know that that's pretty common for people to buy like a million pregnancy tests and just want that confirmation, and just the fact that you were like, let's see where this goes, and just to be open and flexible.
And pregnancy tests are so inaccurate.
Yeah.
A lot of them are like, yes, you're pregnant. No, yes. I was just like, I'm just gonna let it be, and I know I'm pregnant. I don't need the confirmation. And maybe from the last time I was pregnant, I did a pregnancy test and you get excited, you see the blue lines. And so maybe having that, be like, let's just let it be and see.
Are you willing to share a little bit about your birth story?
Yeah. So we were in Hawaii and I had an amazing midwife. I didn't have a doula. Not that I didn't want one, but I don't really seek out practitioners. I kind of let them come to me. I've always done that. And so I didn't really meet any doulas in Kauai. And it just felt like Bailey is so supportive and so in it with me. And maybe if
he was your doula.
He was my doula. I love that. Yeah. If he wasn't like that, then I would probably be like, I need a doula as well.
Not everyone needs a doula in birth. So thank you for speaking to that.
Had I known after I did some more like healing around a miscarriage, there's doulas that support in that. I recommend that to anyone maybe that's been going through that or has gone through that. It's like, I didn't have a doula because I didn't know about it. But had I known about it, I would have definitely, because it just could help really heal and process, and someone that you can talk to about it where you don't feel like shame or anything around it. But so no doula for my actual birth, but I had my midwife, I had Bailey, and then I had my mom there. And I think it's really important to only have people surrounding you in birth that are going to help you bring that baby earthside. Like no one else should be in your vicinity.
So you had a midwife. Did you do it at home or at a birth center?
I did it at home, not at my home. We lived pretty deep in the North Shore in Kauai, and most midwives in Kauai, there aren't a lot of midwives, but they won't go past the Hanalei Bridge because it can close so abruptly due to heavy rains or flooding. And so her thing was like, yes, but we're not going to have the baby there. And had I maybe had a baby before, I would have known, like now looking back and I'm like, no, I'm having it at my home. I'm fine. But then I was like, yeah, I'm open to being somewhere else. And yes, it's nice being in your hospital because you never know what could happen. And I don't want to be an hour and a half away. You just never know. So we had it at a friend's little Ohana unit, still at home, but more central and close to a hospital if needed or other services. And so I was maybe 41 and a half weeks pregnant.
Were you nervous going past your due date, by the way?
No, all of my practitioners, the midwives I saw, I was like, do not tell me my due date. Tell me my due month, like end of July. Don't tell me a date. So I think it's so silly and you get attached to this date and then you tell people the date and then they're like, did you have your baby yet? You're like, no. So I was like, I don't even want to know a date. So I actually never had a due date. It was like a due window of like mid to end of July. Mid-July happened. I felt fine. She had quite a few births planned that month, and she didn't want for any reason to be like split between two different births. And so she was like, well, we can begin to like encourage labor. And so she did a membrane sweep when I was at 41 and a half weeks. She gave me cotton root bark, and then she gave me some homeopathic remedies that like can encourage labor. I think because my mom was there too, and she was staying with us, I think maybe I felt like a little pressured. And then from like, yeah, I don't want my midwife being called out. Maybe I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do this things. Looking back on it now, I'd been like, no, I'm doing my own thing, letting my body be ready. It was all beautiful and meant to be, and I'm grateful for everything. But looking back on it now, I would have just been like, no, we'll go into labor naturally, which I did eventually, but go back to the membrane sweep. I got acupuncture. That night, I started getting contractions, and they were mild. I was like, okay, this is maybe happening. It was tricky because we were having the baby at someone else's house, and that drive is about maybe a little less than an hour and a half. And so I wanted to labor as much at home, but I also wanted to be like cozy and set up in this new space.
Yeah.
And then get cozy. And so I didn't want to be in too much intensity during the drive. And based off my contractions, we told Jasmine, she's like, yeah, I think you guys should begin to make your way to the house. And so we did. We packed everything up, got there. Contractions still were happening very infrequently. And then I got some sleep, and then I woke up, and then nothing, like no contractions, nothing up until like that afternoon, like just nothing. So I think they were induced from the things I was taking. It wasn't my body actually signaling contractions. Your body can either respond to them and kick into gear, or it didn't. And I was like, okay. And I had a moment where I was just like annoyed. I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to be at home. It's hot. It's not my space. Like, I was like annoyed. I was like, ah. And Bailey was just such a good support. He's like, relax. Like, baby's coming. Just like, we took a long walk, and I was just like, just annoyed at not listening to my intuition of saying like, no, I actually don't want to do these things to start induced labor. And then we walked back, and then my midwife came, and she's like, well, you can go back home. That's fine. Or we can step it up a notch and have this baby. I was like, okay, let's do it. Cause I'm like, I don't want to go back home and then come back. Like, I love my home and my space, and to keep being uprooted and going back and forth just was like, no, like, let's just do this. And so out came the castor oil tablets. And
did you do the midwife brew with the lemon verbena?
No, I don't think so.
You just did castor oil straight
in little capsules.
Wow. Okay. And did that work?
Well, so I want to say like 15 or 20, and then we had my boobs like pumping for like 3 hours. She had it down like that. Like, she's like, I know how to get a baby if we want to have a baby. And I'm like, let's commit. I don't want to go back home. So let's just do all the things. And so we did that. Castor oil, pump, more cotton root bark, more castor oil. And then she's like, okay, now just relax, like go in your bed, go lay down. So I took a shower. And at this time, I still had like really mild to like infrequent contractions. And I was just like annoyed at that point. I was just like, not to mention castor oil. Like,
I mean, so it's effective and ultimately allows people to have their baby, but it can be really harsh and disruptive.
Totally. And I didn't know that. I went and lay down in the bed, and then I felt like a balloon pop in my belly. And I was like, oh, I think my water just broke. And as soon as that happened, it was like, I think maybe because of the castor oil and doing all those things, I was like heavy into labor as soon as my water broke. There was no like, oh, here's a little mild one. Here's a more medium one. Okay, it's getting stronger. I was like, oh my God, what? Like intense, like the most intense feeling I've ever experienced, from like 0 to like a 10. So that kicked it into gear. And that was like around 7 p.m. I think she was born at 3 a.m. So it was a quick labor, and it was very intense. You go into this different place. No one told me how intense labor could be, and it could be beautiful too. And I did all this other like research and like about orgasmic birth and like how it can be so beautiful. And it was so beautiful, but like the intensity that you can also feel is, I felt like my bones were just like shattering in like certain ways. And I think because I don't know, maybe the stuff I was doing prior to induce the labor just made it come on like so strong that I didn't really have like the mental space to be like, okay, let's transmute this feeling into like pleasure, or, like a different feeling. Because it was so intense right away. I was like, whoa. And so I was just like, all right, we're in this. Like Bailey was like, he's never seen me like that. Like you go like full primal, like roaring and just like letting out the intensity that you're experiencing. And also it's like your body's so amazing because then it goes away. Like the contraction comes and then it's like, oh, where'd that go? You have this moment of like rest and it's crazy. You're like, wow. And I know why you need that rest because you just need to like have a moment to like breathe and regroup and be like, okay. Yeah, I was in and out of the bathtub. It felt so good, just the warm water. Like it relaxed me so much that my contractions kind of like tapered off a little bit. And then she's like, no, 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 get out of the tub. Like, let's walk, let's do these different positions. And I was just solely like in my own space and like doing whatever she would recommend. And just, you put so much trust in this person that you've really not known for a while. Like the space midwives hold are incredible. Like I have so much respect for them. Your job is insane. Like,
It is.
you're looking to this person for like when you're feeling the most crazy feelings you've ever felt and you're like, am I okay? And like any facial expression that she gave me that would have been like fearful, I would have been like fearful because I'm putting so much trust in her. And she never like caved. She just like came alive. She's like, if you're meant to be a midwife, love it.
Yeah.
Amazing. But like Bailey was like, if I would have seen Jasmine like show any expression of like fear or question, I would have been like, nope, let's go to the hospital. Cause like it sounded like you were dying.
Well,
And
it's hard on partners, right? Because the one person
totally.
they love and care about most in
Yeah.
the world is going through such a physical experience that they can't fix or make better or easier. And it's hard on partners, especially male partners, because they are doers. They are fixers. They want to make things better. And this is just the one thing that, it's not about doing, it's about being a loving, supportive presence. And, what you said about the midwife's face and modeling to you through her face and her body expression of just being calm and a relaxed presence is everything in labor. It's everything to make someone feel calm and safe in their body through just our facial expressions.
Oh, it's huge because you're looking at this person for like the support because they've never experienced it. And most people never witness a birth until they give birth. And so you don't know that what you're feeling and experiencing is probably very normal. So for them, they go to so many births, so it's normal to them. But for you, it's your first time and you're just like, am I okay? Is this okay? Is everything okay? You're just, that's always going through your head. And so she was amazing. And she really put to peace like Bailey, and Bailey was amazing too. And like, not once was he like, I think we should go to the hospital or anything. He was very like calm and trusting, but you don't know. And I remember looking at her and be like, do you have anything for the intensity? And she just shakes her homeopathy pills. I'm like, oh my God. She's like, the only way out is through. And I was like, okay. It was at that point, which I had read about, where you feel like you can't do it anymore. And that's when you're so close.
Transition, yeah.
And I was definitely at that point. I had a lot of back labor. And so the pressure and intensity on my lower spine, that's where it felt like, where I mentioned my bones felt like they were shattering. Because, as women, we were used to cramps in our belly and we're used to like a little bit of pain there from periods. And so to have a pain in your lower spine, like I've never had pain there before. It just felt very new and like, how do I access this? Like, how do I calm it down? And so different positions help. I was mainly in the tub on my floating, and then Bailey was underneath me, like holding me. But I was just like, felt like an hour where her little head was making that pivot and that turn. The intensity, I was like, oh my God. And Jasmine was like, talk to your baby, like tell her to move. I was like, move.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
because she's in this journey with me. You think it's just you, but they're like, oh my God, what are they experiencing? And anyway, so I was probably in that space for maybe an hour. And then I felt something shift in my body. I was like, I need to get out of the tub. I need gravity. I need something to like ground me and help me birth this baby. And during the whole birth, Jasmine maybe checked me twice. Because had she have like checked me and been like, you're only at 3 centimeters. I don't know. I think it can be dangerous to always like check in because then you're like, I'm only at 3 or, whatever you may be at. And I guess I was already at 3 centimeters when she did the membrane sweep. So Penelope's head was super low already. So she checked me once and I was at 7, which felt really good for me. I was like, oh, that makes me feel good. I was like, I can do this. So yeah, I felt something shift. I was like, I need to get out of the water. So she moved me to the birthing stool to sit, and Bailey was behind me. I felt like 12 minutes of just pushing, and she was out.
Wow.
So looking back, I was wondering, I was like, maybe I was pushing when I was in the tub as well, because 12 minutes seems really quick, but maybe not. I don't know. Because when I was laying in the tub before I got out, I was so tired and I was like falling asleep between contractions and then it would wake me back up. I looked on the ceiling and it was like being like wood ceiling and I saw 3 purple little orbs like floating on the ceiling.
Wow.
And I'm getting chills now talking about it. And that's what was my cue to get out of the tub and onto the birthing stool. It's like, oh, she's here. She's in the room. Like she's ready. Because the whole pregnancy, I had seen purple, like very like violet purple. I did a breath work when I was 4 months pregnant at our yoga studio. No one knew I was pregnant, but at the end of the series, the whole room was purple. And I was like, are there purple lights on? Because we did have purple lights that could change colors. And I was like, no lights are on. Like, this is the room's purple. And I was like, whoa, I've never seen visuals like that. And then other things were just like purple, purple, purple. And so when I saw the purple orbs on the ceiling, I was like, oh, her spirit's here in the room. Like she's ready to join her body. And so that's when I got out of the tub. And even my mom, I told my mom the story after. She's like, yeah, I saw you looking at the ceiling. I was like, is she hallucinating? Like she saw me looking at the ceiling, like really inquisitively, like, oh, what's she looking at? And then I told her afterwards. So anyways, yeah, I got to the birthing stool and then Jasmine had a near. She's like, do you want to see your baby's head? I was like, no.
You're like, I want this baby out.
Because it looked like just like a little like sliver. I was like, no, I know the head's much bigger than that. Like, this is not encouraging me. Which was also kind of weird. Like after the birth, I had a friend who had gifted me like a beautiful like pregnancy get like ready, like all the beautiful things like aromatherapy and like this beautiful beeswax candle. And it was a mold of a mother like on her knees with her hand like on her baby's head, wow, giving birth. And I had that like looking at it throughout my pregnancy, like by my bathroom sink. And I felt afterwards like a lot of shame that I didn't want to like see my baby's head or like do it myself. I felt like I was going to do it myself. But in the moment, I was just like, I need other people right now around me. And it was so weird. Like, it's like, why do I feel shameful about that? Like, I think it's important to go into birth with intentions, but not expectations. So that was probably definitely an expectation. I'm like, I'm going to like feel my baby's head and like birth it myself. And also the videos I was watching was like women were doing that. So I was like, oh, I'll do that. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna, don't show me. I'm like, I need to just like focus my body and my breath. I think it's also important to let your body do the work. And it was so different for me because I'm always like, tell your mind to do something and it will do it. Like manifestation, everything. Like I've always been very like conscious of my thoughts and my mind and everything. And during birth, I was like, forget my mind, like let my body do this. My body knows what to do. I like think too much about my mind. Yes, like give encouraging words, but I was like, almost step out of your mind and like just let your body do it. And so that was helpful as well. Put more focus on that for me. But yeah, we pushed and I pushed her out and I didn't find out what she was until I knew she was a girl. I dreamed she was a girl, but I didn't know like for sure because I never found out the sex. And then like everyone that saw my belly was like, "You're having a boy." And so I was like, I'm kind of confused. I was like, am I having a boy? But I feel like it's a girl, and I have dreams it's a girl. And when I birthed her, Jasmine put her on my chest right away. And it was like 5 minutes her being there before I was even like, wait, are you a girl? And so like I held her up, like, you a girl, I knew it. But moments after birth are just precious. They're like
precious.
Euphoric. The intensity just completely goes away for me, at least. So like, oh, and thankfully I didn't tear or anything, so it was a very like smooth recovery. But all three of us afterwards just slept for like 5 hours. Even Penelope, she just nursed a little bit, but like passed out on my chest.
It's funny. I tell this to my clients after they give birth, and it's something that is completely ignored in hospital settings. But after a baby is born, they're tired. And so the longest stretch of sleep occurs right after birth. And I always tell my clients, get a good nap in, because after this, they will be up more regularly, more frequently. But there's usually a long stretch of sleep that happens right after birth. And unfortunately, in the hospital, they don't necessarily give patients the space to be able to rest and bond with their baby. People are kind of coming in all the time. So it's really lovely to hear that you got to have that experience of rest. And my goodness, just the way that you talk about how birth unfolded and being able to dance with the mysteries of birth and not be too in your head, but really in your body is beautiful to hear, because I feel like a lot of women, and I don't like to make generalizations, but our world is sort of really skewed towards our minds, right? We got to do things, we got to plan, we got to organize, we got to analyze. We're constantly using our brains, which is incredible for certain tasks, but not for birth, right?
Totally. No one told me that. And I didn't do too much reading beforehand because I didn't want to have too many of other people's birth stories in my own head and just let my own unfold. And so I really didn't do a lot of like external education. Like I read a little bit of Ina May's The Spiritual Midwifery, just a tiny bit of it. I was not devouring much literature on babies and birth and everything, which I thought maybe before I was pregnant that I would do that. But I was just like very like turned off of like not having any outside information come to me. I just wanted it to be my own experience. Even prepping for birth, like I didn't do any breath work classes. I did nothing. I felt like I moved to a peaceful environment, and that was the best medicine for me that I needed in order to be the best person I could be for that birth.
I love
And then looking back on it now, I think maybe with my second, I would try to do maybe a little more breath work. But also I have a friend who does hypnotic breathing for birthing. And then she's like, at a certain point, it just goes out the window and you do what you can do. Like, yes, it helps you in like the beginning phases and maybe for some women all the way through. But I think my labor was so intense right away that I don't know if it would have been that effective.
Sure.
Everything happens.
Yeah, I think are you talking about hypnobirthing or hypnobaby?
Yeah.
Yeah, I teach that as well, but it's just one tool of many different tools that could be helpful depending on the person, and for other people, maybe not so much. So
that's another thing about birth is like, it's so unique and to you. It's like, don't compare it to anybody else. Then there's such a culture, I think, about like, oh, you either do home births or you do hospital births. There's no like gray area. It's like you have your baby wherever you feel most comfortable. If that's at home, have it at home. If that's in the hospital where you feel safer, then have it in the hospital. There's a lot of negativity I've experienced towards hospital births. And I was always like, yeah, if I end up in the hospital, I end up in the hospital, and that's fine. You have to go in with such an open mind and have your baby wherever you feel the safest and most comfortable. And it's so amazing that we have C-sections. Like otherwise mamas die. Like that's why women died in childbirth, because we didn't have that intervention. And yes, I think it's gone a little far where, you know, you can schedule C-sections without needing to have a C-section. But again, it's up to the mom. And otherwise, like I had a friend recently to give birth and she labored for like 3 days at home and then needed to have a C-section because of the baby's position. And her husband asked the midwife after, like, so what happened like back in the day before we were able to have C-sections? And she's like, the women died and usually the baby. And it's like, wow, be thankful for what we have, but also do whatever feels the most true to you. And
thank you for saying that, because that is something that I feel so, so strongly about, and I'm very sensitive to. There are a lot of doulas that only teach their clients that natural is better, or that you are a better mother or woman if you do a certain way of birth your baby a certain way. And that's just not my experience. I've attended hundreds of births and I've never seen the same thing play out twice. You don't get a medal at the end of labor for doing it a certain way. Your medal is your child. And hopefully your child is healthy and you are healthy, and that you also felt held through the process. However that ends up looking is really not within our control. So it's just really refreshing to hear you say how open and flexible you were with wherever it is that you ended up, and that you weren't so fixated on what it looks like, which I think a lot of women are. And part of that's our culture, part of that media, and that's totally a can of worms. But
oh my God, I know. I was like, I'm not taking any content in from any other, like, because I was like listening to a few podcasts, and it was like this very strict midwife doula, and she was like, the only way is doing it at home. And I was like, no, like, yes, that's where I want to have my baby. But what if I end up in a hospital? I don't want to feel shame about that. There is no black and white. Like, childbirth is so unique to each person. There should be no shame around how you had the baby, where you had the baby. It's like, as long as the mom feels safe, as long as the baby's healthy and the mom is healthy at the end of the day, that's where you had your baby. And that's beautiful.
I love that. I'm wondering, what was your postpartum experience like? Did you have any identity shifts or dying off of previous idea of who you are during birth?
Yeah, I feel like definitely during birth, you're just like, oh, a lot of parts of you die. But I feel like after 3 months is where I started to be like, whoa, what did I just go through? I also felt like I didn't really like come back into my body after like 3 weeks. I felt like I just like left it in order to bring her earth side, and just like mentally left it. And so I felt like after 3 weeks, I was like, okay, I'm back in my body. And then after like 3 months, I was like, okay, like, whoa, what just happened? But for postpartum support, a lot of rest, and then just like not doing anything that I didn't want to do. I remember I went to the beach like maybe 5 days after she was born, and I felt so vulnerable. I was like, I need to go back home. I should not be out in public. Like, I just felt like also like protective of my baby. Like, we were at this beautiful, safe beach, like in Kauai, but I was just like, I gotta go home.
Yeah, you weren't ready.
Was not ready to leave the house. And so I think just being really conscious of how you feel, and your mind changes. Like, you just shift altogether as a person. Like, the amount of love and the heart expansion that I now have is just like, whoa, you love this little creature so much. And it just keeps growing every day. You're like, how could I love this baby even more? And then you do. And you're just like, whoa.
Oh. Since you have built your business around holistic beauty, has the way you perceive beauty or connect to beauty changed since becoming a mother?
It definitely has. I think just women in general were very conscientious of our beauty, our body, and programming growing up, and then to like see your body go through a massive transformation. I feel like I just don't care so much anymore. I felt like I didn't really care that much beforehand, but you know, you do. And then after birth, I was like, I don't care. You want to be healthy and feel healthy in your body, but to just like release that pressure of being like, oh, I got to be fit after a child, or I have to get my body back. It's like,
there is no getting the body back. There's like, only going forward.
Yeah, your body just grew a human, like, and you're worried about getting your body back. Like, your body's amazing. Like, it just birthed life. You just need to have so much more compassion about that. People wearing like different like corset things to like get their belly back. And I'm like, there is like belly binding, which is I think an Ayurvedic way, but it's like different. It's not so much for like fitness. It's more so like to like hold your womb and different things and herbs and stuff and oils. So not referring to that, but like the different things, you're just like, no, you don't need that. Like let your body come back when it comes back. Yeah, it definitely did shift. And I just feel more compassion around all of that.
It's so refreshing to hear and so enlightening to hear. Do you have any imparting wisdom to share with any woman that's listening who is either pregnant or hoping to be a mother someday?
It's the best thing you'll ever do. It's like the best purpose. I think it's important to want to be a mommy. If you want a baby, like it's the most amazing fulfillment you'll want to be. And you don't want children, that's beautiful too. I think I have a few friends that don't want babies, and it's like, I think they feel like they're not doing their service, or there's like a societal programming around like, oh, you need to procreate, you need to have a baby. And it's like, yes, they're amazing, but if you don't want one, and you don't have one, I don't know. I think when you intentionally call in a baby, you're so ready for one. You're just like loving, I don't know, every moment, the hardness, everything about it. And, you know, you can still do that if you don't intentionally want a baby either. But I just think, you know, when you're ready, like it's the best feeling, the best purpose you'll ever do. And it's really hard.
Yeah,
but
it's really
like
hard.
so beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for that. And you are such a light. And it was so amazing to chat with you, and just your willingness to share about your experience and that transition. And it's just so special. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, talking about all the things. It was really sweet. Oh, Penelope's stretching. She's like, oh, we're at the end. Thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share with friends and family, and stay tuned for the next episode.